Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Tonight we're going to be looking at Complete Alan Moore Future Shocks. This is a 2006 collection of all of Alan Moore's earliest short stories that were in 2000 AD. This is some of the first professional work that Alan Moore did, and you really see this learning curve going on. And some of these stories are a little goofy. Maybe a lot of them are goofy, but you can see that Alan Moore cleverness in a lot of these stories. But they're pretty much all played for laughs. They're all trying to be funny. This was published by 2000 AD, the book division of the magazine. And of course, there's a lot of artists in here. Alan Moore collaborated with many different artists when he was working there. Though I gotta say, I wish he collaborated with an artist on this cover, because this cover is terrible. It's just some boring photo. As an example of what a good cover looks like, back in the 80s, Titan Books had the license, or at least published all their, the 2000 AD stuff in America. They were bigger editions, and this is Alan Moore Shocking Futures, and this is a beautiful cover by Kevin O'Neill. I don't know why they didn't reprint this. And then Alan Moore's Twisted Times, reprinting his Abelard Snaz serial and the Time Twister short stories he did. The first one was all of the Tharg's Future Shocks. Once again, covered by O'Neill, and just a pretty cool looking cover. And I wish that was the back cover of this book. But, you know, this doesn't have all the stories in here. Those two Titan books edited the stuff and didn't have everything. So I'm glad to have this one, even though it's smaller and has a crappy cover. It's a pretty nice size, pretty definitely meaty. It's a good read. And on the back we have this little caricature of Alan Moore as a robot. I think this is Kevin O'Neill. I'm not sure. Okay, let's get cracking. There's Tharg. He's kind of the fake editor of 2000 AD. His title page. We got all the credits. And then the first chunk of this book is all of his Tharg's Future Shock stories. Of course, they're all written by Alan Moore, and then we have all the artists. And they even tell you what Prague they came from. So these are all pretty much the early 80s. Alan Moore was doing these. The first one's called Groks Bearing Gifts. And it's art by Ian Gibson, even though in the credits it says Q Twerk. I don't know why. So basically, this story starts off, for years Earth has been prepared for an invasion from the stars. We see this gung-ho general who's just all like, oh, just let him try something fishy. We're ready. We're ready to kill these, repel these aliens. The prime minister's there. And then their little spaceship looks like a soda can. And when the aliens come out, they're not warlike at all. They're actually quite affable, even though they're kind of obnoxious as well. They're basically like the stereotype of like the ugly American tourist. They're just all like loud and brash, and they want to see all the touristy sights. But the thing that sets them apart from most tourists is that these aliens, the Groks, are filthy rich. They just have gold, tons of gold, and they're very generous. And they just tip everyone they see. If anyone just helps them out a little, he'll be like, here, have some gold. There's a tip for you. They call them plastoons, but they're basically bars of gold. So he gives some to the general who's all ready to go commando on these guys. He's just all like, fuck, I can retire. Fuck that. I don't care. So they go across Earth, visiting all the sites. And you know how there's throughout history, there's those guys who like sell the San Francisco Bridge or something, scam artists. Well, they buy up everything. You know, these scam artists will be like, hey, you want to buy the Eiffel Tower? Hey, here's 20 plastoons. They buy the Colosseum. And eventually they like Earth so much they want citizenship. So the world leaders talk about this, debate it, and they say, sure, they got all that gold. That's what it really comes down to. It's just like, they're filthy rich. Let them in. They settle down in northern Scotland, and then they invite all of their relatives, and it looks like there's thousands of them. And pretty soon they take over the culture. They buy radio stations. This is some of Alan Moore's goofy. He really has a good time just making up these nonsense alien words. Good day, this is Rockin' Zarp Zumbluck, bringing yous the sounds of the nation. Here's Siggy and the Sluzzgreeps with I Love You So Much, I Can't Croak My Squawkle. So stupid. But you can tell he's having fun doing it. Their weird sense of fashion, they buy fashion boutiques. So America's getting grokkerized. But people they're still gullible, and they keep buying up things that scam or to sell them. They buy like all of Soviet Russia for some gold. Eventually, though, the bill comes due, and the Groks inform the world leaders. Right here we see Maggie Thatcher. Pretty nice caricature. They inform the world leaders, including Maggie Thatcher, that, we pretty much own the whole planet now. And here's the intergalactic laws of property development that basically says, as long as the seller is a bona fide member of the planet in question, the sale is considered binding. And basically, we're evicting you. If you choose to fight, we're going to incinerate you. So the Groks are loving it, taking over the planet. There's Mount Rushmore now, all grokkerized. And pretty soon they start changing all the names of the streets and countries and everything. And then finally we see that general talking to Margaret Thatcher. Alan Moore says, naturally, the native earthlings still had some reservations. Where did we go wrong, says the general. We were prepared for anything. And we see Earthling resettlement area. All the Earthlings are on these little reservations. In fact, they had lots of reservations. Oh, that clever lad, Alan Moore. This one's kind of not that great, even though I love the art because it's by Brendan McCarthy, one of my favorite cartoonists, definitely from England. This is just like the English Flandrusian phrase book. And it's just kind of making fun of phrase books. And really nice art by Brendan McCarthy here. So here's an example. He's saying some nonsense up here. Once again, Alan Moore's having a good time. Svuz galat bardas tunru voljak. Those gentlemen are eating our luggage. So basically, on this alien planet, these poor Earth tourists are just like, it's not a good time. At the hotel, at the beach, everywhere. They're not ready for this planet. Alan Moore is a funny anecdote. That's one good thing about those Titan books. Alan Moore writes little introductions and kind of gives you a paragraph or two about each story. And he said he wrote this because he once read a Cajun phrase book. And basically he was saying you can tell a lot about a region by the phrase books. Because for some reason this phrase book had 20 translations of things about hemorrhoids. So he was all like, I don't know what's going on with the Cajun people, but in the phrase book there's a lot of hemorrhoid talk. So that's what we see here. We see that this planet is obviously not very friendly to humans, and things get worse and worse. Giant insects attack them, and I like this one where they're at the beach. Why are you worshiping our beach umbrella? All these aliens are praying. They think it's a god or something. So it's just all kind of stuff like that. To be honest, it's not that funny, most of it. But God, I like this art a lot. Early Brendan McCarthy. And finally, this Earth family, they all get arrested and thrown into a workforce gang. And the whole time the father is saying, I want to see the British ambassador. And then he realizes that in the torture chamber where he is, the British consul's right next to him, so he's fucked. Now we have the last rumble of the Platinum Horde. This is drawn by John Higgins. Pretty well, too. This is nice. So basically we see this, the Carbongian Empire They were this rich, powerful empire, very warlike. And the leader here, he basically calls in his vizier or whatever, and he says, I want to keep conquering planets. And his vizier says, you've conquered everything. There's no one left to conquer. And there's a humorous thing where he's all like, what about this planet? And he's like, yep, we conquered them last week. Or their planet blew up a month ago. So finally he devises a plan. I love this, is sticking out his tongue. This is an ancient Carbongi sign of inspiration. So basically what he does is he gets his whole army and he makes this interstellar armada. And he basically just sends them out to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, past the known worlds, to just conquer every planet they see. And so these guys are all, as they conquer every planet, they're like, kill, burn, pillage. Now they see, they keep seeing these weird signs that say horizon, 8 billion parsecs. So these are generational ships. Whole generations are born, conquer, pillage, and die, and then their children, learn how to kill, burn, and pillage. Now, of course, after many generations, people kind of forgot why they're even doing this. And these guys are arguing about, or just curious about, wait, are we supposed to pillage first and then burn them? Or do we kill them before we pillage? And so finally, this is going on for a millennia. And finally, they find this planet. And this planet, I guess, was once a mighty civilization, but had grown weak and spineless through inactivity. So the Platinum Horde conquered them, and then eventually they realized they're on Carbongi. Those signs they kept seeing, they've traveled through the whole universe. It's like a loop, and they're back at Carbongi, and they've conquered their own planet. And then eventually they just say, well, what do we do now? And none of them really know or care what to do, but one of the generals just like, well, we just got to keep going. And they just fly out, I guess, to reconquer every world they conquered, thousands of years ago. Kind of an interesting comment on war. Next we have They Sweep the Spaceways. This is art by Gary Leach, who of course would collaborate with Al Moore on Miracle Man. And this is just like this fake ad kind of, or educational thing. And it's basically like we see God here, and it has this kind of this idea that, God and whatever, the cosmos, are ruled like a corporation. There's the accounts department. They're like, real galaxy, you're over budget on those A-type suns. Send them back and order some B-type suns instead. And so basically to take care of all the rubbish in the universe is the Transgalactic Garbage Disposal Corps. Now basically you have to be like a mile high tall to be in this corps, because you got to be able to deal with suns going supernova and stuff. So we see this guy here, Jelly, in kind of a cute, interesting way to show how big he is. He's heading towards the sun, and we see that he passes behind it. He's that huge. So he fills in dangerous black holes with speckle. He has to clean up the western spiral arm of the galaxy before clocking out. So he's just working stiff, And mostly he has to keep civilizations in check. He's basically an exterminator. When he finds a planet, he sprays this, kills everyone on the planet. That was really nice Gary Leach art. And then finally, when he gets back to the office, one of his coworkers is like, dude, man, I've been off for hours. I've been off for 1,000 years because I found this new product that makes our job so easy. It's called Big Bang. And all you gotta do is use this shit, and it just destroys, like, thousands of 99% of all known civilizations. And then Tharg comes out and basically, here's a coupon. Or not a coupon, I'm sorry, an order form where if you're interested in the job, you can apply. I guess you have to be 870,000 miles in height. This one I like a lot. This is a very Alan Moore, he would go on to like own this kind of story. Basically taking some classic old heroic character and just knocking him down and kicking the shit out of him. So this is a character that he made up. It's this basically Flash Gordon type named Rocket's Red Glare. Oh, before I continue, the art is by Mike White, who did a lot of stuff for 2000 AD. Rocket's Red Glare and his faithful companion Lucia, they fought all kinds of interstellar baddies, but his biggest arch nemesis was this guy, Logar. Now, that's a long time ago. The past, 30 years, Earth's been totally at peace. Nobody's invaded. And it's been a very good time for the world. But not really for Rocket's Red Glare. And now we see Rocket's Red Glare now with Lucia. He's so fat he has to put this girdle on to get into his suit. She's gotten a little older, She doesn't look, she's not as pretty. And I guess they're going to do a shopping center opening. They're just basically very minor Z-list celebrities now. Nobody remembers them. So Rocket is sick of this shit. So he actually finds Logar. And he says, hey, I got a proposition for you. Because I guess they've always had a grudging respect for each other. Almost like if you have an arch enemy, And also Logar always wanted Lucia. He's like, how is the striking Lucia? Is she as charming as ever? And so basically they hatch a plan. 2 weeks later, Logar declares war on Earth. The world leaders are freaking out. They're like, we haven't gone to war. We're totally unprepared. We haven't gone to war in decades. There's only one person we can turn to, Rocket's Red Glare. And now he gets to be the big hero. I guess Rocket's Red Glare, the plan is that he's got all of these automated ships, what Logar does, and they're basically going to blow themselves up. There's just robots in them. Whenever, Rocket shows up. So it looked like Rocket killed them all. And then we see the main ship here. And the plan is that when he gets to Logar's mothership, he's going to fire some missile. It's going to miss. And then Logar's ship's going to spin off into space. It's all staged. But when he gets there, these two giant hands come down and just crush his ship, killing both him and Lucia. And then Logar attacks Earth. And so Logar had his own plan the whole time. I like this one a lot. This is a cautionary fable. And this is all written in a verse, as if it was a children's book. This is the tale of Timothy Tate, a child too vile to contemplate. Obese, belligerent, and rude, young Timmy was obsessed by food. And I love this art style by Paul Neary. It really does look interesting. It doesn't look like Paul Neary's art normally does. I mean, see, this does, because this is the introduction, where Tharg is babysitting his nephews, and he's reading them this bedtime story to teach them a lesson. Helen Moore's rhymes are really good. He's, even at a young, he was a young writer, but it's actually pretty clever, the writing. I wish I could read most of it to you. But he's such a glutton that he eats furniture. The people on the street have to worry about him eating their children. He's just going after the children. He goes to the forest and is eating all the animals in the forest, like as if he was Golem the dinosaur, the Japanese dinosaur. But one night, he's eating everything in the forest he can find, even twigs. And this glowing disc drops. A UFO. So he The aliens come out of their ship, and Timmy just attacks them and eats them, wolfs them down. But I guess this alien meat didn't sit well with Timmy, and he grew and grew to gargantuan size. I like the way Paul Neri draws his amazingly fat, chubby legs. So now, look at how Gil Kane that looks. I think that's a swipe. Seriously, that looks like a familiar Gil Kane panel I've seen. So he attacks the town. He's almost like a kaiju now. And he's just eating everything. He goes to the big city. He's just scarfing down people. Eating all the animals in the zoo. Eating the buildings. And there's like a King Kong type ending. And finally he falls off of the building and dies. This guy says, I'll get rid of the body for you. And he owns a dog food company. So it all becomes, Timmy becomes dog food for millions, thousands of dogs. Next we have Mr. Could You Use a Squange? And this is art by Rob Tyner. And we see these two guys. They just got back from a space trip. And I'm sorry, this flashback now. These two astronauts have just gotten back from a space trip, a 2-year mission to Alpha Centauri. They're being greeted by the press. And basically, they show everyone what they found. And it's these weird, they almost seem like dead jellyfish. And people start calling them squanges. And now these two guys, they've been researching these squanges. Squanges do nothing. They're just like this biomatter, except they do one thing. They reproduce like crazy. So these two scientists in charge of the project that we saw in that first panel, they're just like, what are we going to do with all this squange? So they come up with a great idea. They call up a marketing firm. And they start selling squanges to everybody. They make it like the new pet rock or something like it. It's a total fad. And it works. It's like Cabbage Patch Dolls. People are fighting over the squanges in the department stores. But then one day, one of the squanges takes over this kid like a parasite. And all of a sudden, the kid's brilliant. He's talking like like Albert Einstein. And everyone's all like, what could this mean? This is crazy. And pretty soon, more and more of these squanges start jumping on people's heads, whatever, bonding with them, and everyone's becoming a genius. And the whole time they're wondering why they realized that the squanges were left on this deserted planetoid. That's where they were found by some other race. And it's the one question the squanges can't answer when they say, why were you left there? And they just they stutter and are just like, could you repeat the question? But the thing is, they do know the answer is because they take over the planet, And what it turns out, the reason why they were left on that planetoid is they were all insane. The race of squanges is very smart, but this was like a mental institution planet. So pretty soon everyone is just batshit nuts, talking to fire hydrants. Everyone is crazy. And Tharg comes out and says goodbye to us. Next we have A Second Chance. This is art by Jose Casanovas. What a great illustrator. I imagine, I figure he's a Spaniard, where so many great artists come from. If we see a nuclear war, one guy's left alive. He's like, I can't believe it. But this is horrible. All of humanity's dead. I'm all alone. If only there was Earth could be given another chance. If only there was a way to start again. And then here's a woman's voice. And this woman's kind of beautiful. And he's all like, we can start the whole human race all over again. And she says, that's a great idea. What's your name? And he says, my name's Adam. What's yours? Mavis. Such a dumb joke. It's making fun of all those like horrible sci-fi stories where the last two survivors on Earth just happen to be named Adam and Eve. It might have been funny when it came out, but I've seen that joke and variations on it many times. Here's Twist Ending. Once again, Paul Neary. Look how different the art is from that story about the fat kid. So we see this this guy from the press is about to interview this famous science fiction author. And this is like, kind of shows like how broad Alan Moore's humor is. He's like, your most famous books like Dave the Giant Raccoon, Attack of the Killer Pizzas. He kind of has this like goofy sense of humor a lot of the time. And so this reporter actually has an ulterior motive. He suspects that the science fiction author is an alien from another world. That's the only way he could come up with all these great story ideas. And so he leaps on him, pulling at his rubber mask. But it's not a rubber mask. And he's just like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I'll find my own way out. Sorry about that. And after he leaves, he turns over and his typewriter starts talking to him. And it turns out that typewriter is an alien. And he's been telling him writing these stories for him. Next, we have Salad Days, and this is art by, where's the credit box? There he is, John Higgins again. All these guys that look so different from story to story. This is kind of weird and stiff, this art. It looks very odd to me compared to other stuff I've seen by John Higgins. So here we go, another story about first contact with an alien race. And we see these army guys getting all ready. And, oh God, this one's such a dumb joke. So this one is basically like, one guy mentions like, oh yeah, we're gonna get some burgers for the men. He's like, I don't get one for me, I'm a vegetarian. And then they start saying, these guys should be peaceful. Their transmissions keep talking about how they're humanitarians and they love humanity. I mean, you already could figure it out, I'm sure. It's so blatant. And the aliens land, the doors open, and these vegetable dudes come out. And they chase, and they grab the generals and the soldiers. And, of course, they say, well, of course we're humanitarians, strict humanitarians. After all, we only eat humans, don't we? That's a groaner and a half. But I do like the way he draws these vegetable aliens. John Higgins draws them. This one's called The Beastly Beliefs of Benjamin Blint. This is some great art by Eric Bradbury. He did tons of work for the early issues of 2000 AD. So this guy, we can't see his face. He's talking to a psychiatrist. And he says, oh my God, it was horrible. Everywhere I look, I keep seeing these hideous alien creatures. The first time I was on the street, and we see this panel. It was indescribable. It was the most ghastly thing I'd ever seen, so I ran all the way home. That's a really great drawing of this alien here. I love that. And then a few weeks pass, and then once again, he says he was in the bathroom, and this repulsive alien showed up again. And luckily it disappeared when he opened his eyes again. And then one night he was in bed with him. And finally, the psychiatrist says, I think these are all in your mind. And, I hate this, that the psychiatrist has a German accent. That's a cliche that really bothers me in bad humor. Scientists and psychiatrists are always like, I think the secret is that. They talk like that, like cartoony German. So, and then we realize the reason why we didn't see their faces earlier, because this is what normal people look like, and this is some other planet. And all of these this is the monster. So it's his point of view. He's saying, there was this weird creature in my bed with his eyes were sunken into his face, and he was a strange tan color. Very like kind of a Twilight Zone type ripoff story. Here's All of Them Were Empty. And this is drawn by Paul Neary. And we see these guys, they're sitting in a truck stop, but it's like a space truck stop. And the waitress and these two guys are like, what are we gonna do? And I'm sorry, it's not a space, it's just in the future. And these voices outside are saying, hey, you in there, come on out, give us what we want. So apparently they're surrounded by this hostile group, and they're running out of food inside the diner, and they're like, we're gonna have to leave sometime, we're gonna have to get food. One guy loses his shit and he just says, I'm gonna make a break for it, I can't take it anymore. And as soon as he runs out, we hear his screams. So obviously these are some bad hombres out there. And finally, the waitress and this guy talk to each other, and they're just like, we have only one solution, just give them what they want, I guess. And they calmly walk out. And we see all of these cars, these sentient cars. And basically these humans are now going to be forced to pump gas into them. It's the one thing cars can't do for themselves. Came out years before Maximum Overdrive, but probably not years before the Stephen King story that it was based on, where the cars are all sentient. Next, we have An American Werewolf in Space. This could be in like a DC science fiction comic. We see this guy, Bayard Lupo. He's on the spaceship. They're off on a long journey, thousands of light years away. And he's all like, this is great. I'm a werewolf. I basically have a whole ship full of plump humans to eat. I have all the time in the world. And, they pass a moon, so he turns into a werewolf. And he's going to attack this guy. And all of a sudden, the other guy turns into a werewolf too. And he says, well, I guess we could make a two-way split of all these, of all this prey. And then some other guys show up and say, they better make it a four-way split. And then it turns out everyone on the ship is a werewolf. Meanwhile, down on Earth, we see this head honcho type guy saying, well, it worked like a charm. We screened all the werewolves out of a list of applicants and sent them into space. Each werewolf thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to have a whole ship ripe for the plucking. And then he says something like, oh, and now we're ready for stage 2. And we see all these vampires applying to get on the spaceship. Kind of goofy. Next is The Bounty Hunters. And this is art by John Higgins again. And we see these bounty hunters on an alien world. And they're looking for this creature, or this character named Grud Almighty. Oh, I'm sorry, Rogel Dax. They don't even know what he looks like, but they're like, well, hopefully we can find him. Apparently he's a shapeshifter. And so they're all just paranoid, shooting at bushes. I was like, that could be him. Then they start like getting paranoid with each other, being like, you could be him for all we know. And one of them gets killed. They kill one of them. So one of them says, I once read a story. I think I read this story too, where these guys are looking for an alien, and it turns out the alien is really the planet they're sitting on. Maybe that's the case here. So they just start firing into the ground. And, that's not it either. So they say, let's just go back to our ship. And as they walk into the ship, the hatch closes, and this giant tongue comes out and goes slurp. So that's the creature. As you can see, these early Alan Moore stories are really just like goofy. I think he's having a good time though. There's definitely some of them though are definitely, you can see, especially later on, like that what a clever lad Alan Moore is, and some of them are quite like interesting, clever. Now you could probably tell just by this logo, this is by Brian Talbot, the art, And here's another basically want ad. Tharg says, that last story we printed for jobs went well. So now we have another job. It's basically, we're looking for people who want to rule the universe. So basically it's, if you're out of work, if you got a go nowhere job, become an evil space conqueror. So he goes to the school. God, I love Brian Talbot stuff. Such a good illustrator. And their teacher there, his name's Mr. Direfang Dreadspawn. They all have to pick like scary sounding names for themselves. One of the tests is they have to steal candy from a baby. I kind of laughed at this. This one guy fails because he gets a black eye because this tough little baby wouldn't give up his candy, and he's just like razzing him, giving him a raspberry and kind of glaring at him. That was kind of funny. So now this main guy that we're following, his name is Anthrax Ghoul Shadow now. And they, of course, do things like they scar his face because you have to have like a cool look if you're an evil emperor. And they chop off his hand and give him this scary looking thing. And pretty soon he starts putting his learning into practice. And he does pretty good. Basically takes over a whole planet. But like in all science fiction stories, these guys they never win in the end, right? The bad guys always got to lose. So now we see poor Anthrax, and they're basically carrying him off to be executed. But, it was a good ride while it lasted. Once again, we have a little application form. Please tick one. I am slightly naughty. I am very naughty indeed. I am actually quite evil. It's kind of funny. Here's Return of the Thing. We see this woman that's in the future. She's on some planet. A spaceship lands with this scary creature. A big bug-eyed monster. And the woman's all in a panic. She's like, must hurry. The creature breaks down the door. And the creature then says, I've had a lousy day at the office. Is my dinner ready, Madge? And she's like, yes, it is, honey. All hot for you. So it's a commercial for a thermonuclear pressure cooker. That's like this one wasn't reprinted in those Titan books. In a way, if you guys can get your hand on those Titan books, they really do. They omit some of the worst ones. So they do get most of the choice ones. Because as you've seen some of these comics, they're pretty dopey. But, I mean, it's nice to see Dave Gibbons. Very early Alan Moore-Dave Gibbons collaboration. I didn't mention that. Next we have Skirmish. And this is drawn by Dave Gibbons as well. So we see this huge space armada. And all of a sudden, they look very formidable. And they're going to attack this planet. But all of a sudden, this planet has all these amazing weapons that basically just decimate this unbeatable armada. And it turns out it's because some guy's playing Space Invaders. Yeah, that's terrible. I think Alan Moore's running out of definitely seems like he's running out of ideas. Next, we have The Writing on the Wall. This is a very heady one where these guys have been traveling through uncharted space for forever. And one of them says, what if there isn't an end to the universe? What if it just goes on forever and ever? Because they've been tasked with making it to the end of the universe. And this guy says, I suppose space just ends dead with a brick wall? Of course not. And then all of a sudden, they hit a wall. I don't know why the ship doesn't explode into little bits, but it just kind of bounces off. It's a brick wall. So they decide to, they see that something's written on it. Like there's patterns of white and dark. And they travel for weeks at the speed of light. That's how long it takes. Finally, the computer takes a composite drawing, and it's just graffiti that says Big George rules, okay? God, that's stupid. The concept could have been like really mind-blowing, but it's just really dumb. This one is very silly, but it's really great. This is The Wild Frontier. Once again, the drawings by Dave Gibbons and the Rottens by Alan Moore. We're in New Wyoming. The Octo Bandits have just hit planet, and they're led by Billy the Squid. Look how great Dave Gibbons is at drawing horses, and he's a pretty young cartoonist at this time. Even like some really great cartoonist veterans find it hard to draw horses. So now, luckily, the hero shows up, and it's a masked man, and the octopus gang, or the Octo Bandits, say, there's only one of him, and we can take him. And then he says, oh yeah? And it turns out there's like 100 of these guys, these masked men. I bet you guys can already figure out where this is headed. And, oh guys, I'm sorry, I totally read this wrong. I forgot, this is one of the ones that goes like this. It's in the split here, so it kind of obscures some of the art. It goes this way, I forgot. So, basically, it's just the Octo Bandits are raising hell at the saloon, manhandling women, tentacle grabbing them. And that's when this masked man shows up. Of all the 100 of them attack the Octo Bandits and defeat them. And of course, they were like, who was that masked man? It's the Clone Ranger. So goofy. But I just love the silliness of the strip. And Dave Gibbons draws the shit out of it. Here's another one that reads that way. And this is art by Robin Smith. And we see this guy almost looking like Moses, biblical. And he says, hear me, my people, our pilgrimage is over. Gathered all in the sacred place, it is the entire heaven-favored tribe of Scrant. For generations we have trekked through this vast world. And it's like now we will be visited by, the gods. And they find this pillar of the gods. It just goes up and up past anyone's vision. And then all of a sudden, they're like, see, this vast shape coming down towards us. It must be their chariot. And it's like, oh, it's getting a little close, don't you think? Oh, and we see it's a giant boot of this astronaut squishing them all. God. These really would be rejected by a House of Mystery or whatever, Time Warp or Mysteries in Space. This is On Christmas During Eternity, and we see this sweet family, and it's 2596. Man's made many advances, but has not improved on Christmas. So we see this couple. They keep mentioning like, oh, don't forget to take your daily pill. You don't want to end up all old and wrinkled overnight. Yeah, apparently there's this immortality tablet. People live almost forever. Since Christmas is a time for children, we see this little kid, Timmy. They're like, happy Christmas, Timmy. We brought you all these presents. They have a wonderful day. And then a guy from the government comes and takes Timmy away. He's a robot boy. So because everyone lives forever, nobody's allowed to have children anymore. So it's this precious thing where like one day a year, you get to hang out with this kid. I haven't had a kid my whole life. I've never regretted it one day. I've never been like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a child for one day? Never did, never wanted. I don't know. Maybe I'll be whistling another tune when I'm 80. I don't know. So here we have No Picnic. Oh, God, this is another stupid one. This one's drawn by John Higgins again. And this is just, God, it's so dumb. They're on Easter Island, with the big heads, or something like it. Oh, it is Easter Island. It actually is. And this guy is this family that doesn't respect him and treats him like shit. And the son actually, when he's asleep on the beach, the son buries him up to his neck. And then they just leave him there. And then it turns out the Easter Island statues are in the same predicament. They're like, welcome to the club, buddy. We're actually buried up to our necks. Kind of weird. These really don't look like the Easter Island statues at all. I wonder if John Higgins just didn't want to find a National Geographic and figure out how to draw them. Next, we have the disturbed digestions of Dr. Dibworthy. And this one we can see, like Alan Moore, getting more complex. We see this doctor. He's a brilliant professor, scientist. And he has a paper folded in an interesting way. And all of a sudden, he has this amazing insight. And then immediately, he hears a knock at the door. And it's him. It's himself. And he says, I'm your future self. I've come from an hour in the future to tell you that in 5 minutes, you will invent the world's first time machine. But you have to register the patent, because other people will travel back in time and steal it from you. Then another knock on the door. And he says, I'm your future self. I'm from a week in the future to warn you not to visit the patent office. You'll be hit by a bus. Another guy comes in, another future self. He says, don't listen to that guy. He's an imposter. I was just checking the lineup here. He says, it's a rival inventor in disguise trying to dissuade you from registering your patent. So this just keeps happening. This guy's from 10 years in the future. He says, oh, you just got to stop this invention just totally. There's going to be a trans-temporal war in 10 years. The whole world will be in ruins. That's why you must abandon your idea. And then this guy's wrong. He's wrong. I'm from 20 years in the future. And finally, the guy just says, wait a minute. And apparently they say, you're going to discover time travel because that folded piece of paper gave you the insight that helped you figure out how to travel through time. So finally, the prime guy just says, all right, I've heard enough. Walks over to the fireplace and throws the piece of paper in the fire. And all the guys disappear, of course. And then as he sits there trying to relax with a glass of port wine, he says there's something fascinating about the way it swirled, about its flow patterns. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. That you could totally see. It's like Alan Moore, like he's feeling his oats. He's getting it. I just love that ending where he doesn't have to explain it. It's just like, yeah, the swirls now is another thing that's gonna spark his brain to come up with time travel. This one in the introduction in the other book, Alan Moore even admits is pretty dumb. It's called Sunburn, and it's about this like holiday resort on the sun. I guess they figured out there's these kind of cool spots of the sun where it just doesn't make really any sense why you'd want to be on the sun, even if it's silly. But it does have nice art by Jesus Redondo. And I always like this guy's style. He's, kind of actually, Ian Gibson kind of looks like him. So this guy kills his wife, and he's got to get rid of the body. He's going to take her to these garbage disposal chutes, which go to the center of the planet. Everything's incinerated. But when he's on his way there, a police officer realizes he's holding a dead body. He runs, and he does have this interesting idea how there's pallor parlors there where the fashionable go to lose their suntans. So he's running through all these areas, which is just an excuse for Alan Moore to come up with all these zany ideas. These guys there's fused glass beaches, and these guys surf on lava. That wouldn't work. So he gets on this steamboat that's going to go across the lava lake or whatever to escape. And he goes past the 3-mile limit. And so he's not protected from the full heat of the sun, and he burns up into nothing. And the whole thing was just so Alan Moore could say, Rorschach Stubbs has found his place in the sun. Oh, by the way, yeah, his name's Rorschach. A little preview of things to come. Next, we have Bad Timing, and this is art by, where's the credit box? I think it's Dave Gibbons, even though I can't find the credit box. This is a total parody of Superman's origin, where Kal-El is, his name's Arthur, he's from the planet Clacton, and he's kind of a moron. And so, of course, everyone makes fun of him. Even his wife isn't sure. This looks, see how it's after the Superman movie? It kind of looks like Marlon Brando. And he says, I'm going to, send our baby into space since the planet's going to blow up. It's going to blow up in a few seconds. The wife seems very nonchalant about the same whole thing. She's like, that's nice, dear. So, finally, he rockets his infant son off to into outer space, and then he says only a few seconds left. Actually, the time passes, and he's like, I might have been wrong about Clacton exploding. So of course the mother's furious. Her name's LC. So Arthur travels to this other planet, and he doesn't get to Earth until 1983. But by that time, we have early warning missiles, and when they launch it at the spaceship, Russia misinterprets this action by the U.S., and World War III starts. So before this baby can even get to Earth, it's a nuclear wasteland. This is these half pages because they had ads sometimes. This next one's called Eureka, and it's art by Mike White. And these are people on a generational spaceship. Everyone's bored. They've been off in space for 3 years now, 16 people. Everyone's annoyed at everyone else. There's this one guy who's kind of a weirdo. He's kind of eccentric. And he starts telling this guy, he says, what if an alien is just energy or something? What if it's just a thought pattern with no body? And he keeps talking about this at the canteen. What if an alien is just an idea? An alien is just a concept, something that doesn't even exist in a physical sense. Did you ever think about that? Everyone thinks he's a moron. 6 months pass, and one day he shows up and he's beaming. He's so happy. He says, I made contact with aliens. I was right. Last night I had an idea. It popped into my head. It wasn't human. No human mind could have conceived of it. So that idea was an alien. He's in my mind right now. Everyone just is like, oh, the poor guy, he's lost it. But this one nice woman, she talks to him. And they're chatting. As the narrator walks away, he sees them chatting. And then he notices that the woman starts smiling by the end of the conversation. The next day he sees her, and she's like, he's right, Phil. Marty's the name of the guy who's with the alien, says, he was right. I thought he was crazy too, but he explained his idea to me, and she starts saying, if all time is simultaneous, and the guy walks away before she can finish. But he notices that she keeps talking to people, and after a while, they start nodding and smiling. Pretty soon, he's the only one who hasn't heard this. Finally, one of the guys starts telling him. He tries to run away. He's holding his ears. And he tried to shut the idea out, but he couldn't. And you know what? After a while, he didn't want to. You see, he understood. It was obvious once you had it explained. And now everyone's all happy with this alien idea in them. And then Tharg tries to censors it, thankfully, because it would all be brainwashed. Next, we have this comic called Dad. And pretty nice art by Alan Langford. I'm not familiar with his stuff. And this is kind of a riff on 2001. We see this robot that controls this little space center, Space Command. He's talking to this astronaut who's right outside the door, and he's like, obviously, this is a sentient computer, artificial intelligence. He's like, are you ready to say you're sorry? Come on, don't sulk over a little disagreement, Tony. I know you're out there. Come on in. I'll make you some food. But you really hurt me. the words you said. And then you realize, finally we see Tony, and he basically booted him out, or wouldn't let him back in like a long time ago. He's just ossified. Yeah, I guess he got a little hole in his suit from a meteorite. Next we have Buzz Off, art by Jim Eldridge. These guys are all pretty much, I'm pretty sure, like old school, English comic artists. Guys like him and Mick White. We saw these flies buzzing around this guy's place. Turns out they're little spaceships. And then they all take off. This pigeon is actually like a carrier. And all the flies get into the pigeon. And that's where flies go for winter. This one's called Look Before You Leap. This is very much like a really bad easy twist. We see this guy doing that little thing where you trick a bird. If you go duck hunting, you put a little duck on your head and then grab its neck. And then, of course, you probably know where this is heading. He sees this woman screaming for help, and it's really just this like weird little puppet of this creature, and he grabs him. Wah, wah, wah. Next, we have the Time Twister stories. These are pretty much the same thing, except they're all about time travel. This one's really interesting. It's called The Reversible Man. And it starts off in the present, I guess. Listen, I don't have much time. They're going to kill me, and I have to tell you my story. I'll begin at the beginning. Well, not exactly the beginning, but... And he hears these people backwards saying, he's gone. Had a stroke. But in the way he sees it in his mind, he says, my first memories of darkness and voices talking gibberish. Oh, all of a sudden I became aware that there was an ice cream cone in my face. I was on the floor and there was pain in my neck and back. As I fell, as it was catapulted backwards onto my feet, it got even more painful. And then all of a sudden the pain stopped as I walked backwards. People stopped looking at me. I kept dribbling ice cream off my tongue into the ice cream cone. So as you can tell, time is running backwards. He walks backwards into a house. Luckily, it's his. His wife is there. They're both retired and their 2 teenage sons. And, he goes back to work. And they give him a gold watch for coming back to work. And then things get even better as, he's getting younger and younger, and his wife. And he's more and more in love with her every day. This is kind of actually a moving story. Seeing this life happen in reverse. And then even goes all the way back to when they first started dating, and they're just so happy. Even though this is the future for him. And then, sadly enough, he has the time they first met. They bumped into each other on the street. And then I never saw her again. Because he hadn't met her yet. And he gets younger and younger. And finally, he's all like, I'm very tiny now. Big hands take me away from my mother. I start screaming. I'm scared. And then they basically shove him back into his mother. And then his blackness. That seems kind of horrifying. Now we have another Time Twisters here. This is art by John Higgins. And it's the Planet Earth 6519 AD. No crime, no war, no poverty, no prejudice. Because there's no people. These aliens arrive, and they're like, these humans all wipe themselves out. And these guys are a total peaceful alien race. And I guess they're going to, clone some people from their history. Or at least take their cellular details and reconstruct them. So they get Albert Einstein. They made two. Why not? And Alan Einstein's so smart, he figures out what's going on. They figure out what's going on. And then he says, how do we get out of here? And with his big brain, he figures it out. There's all people throughout history. We see Hitler. We see Tiglath-Pileser III, or whatever his name is. Caligari. And these aliens are just like, they're not used to war, so they're just like, oh shit, what have we done? And now Earth is just totally a constant war between all these time-tossed people. This is like the kind of the masterpiece of Alan Moore's short stories. This one's called Chrono Cops. This is art by Dave Gibbons, and this is very indebted to like Harvey Krichman and Will Elder's mad work. It's obviously a parody of Dragnet. My name's Saturday, Joe Saturday. I'm a cop. I like my coffee weak and sugary. I like my women the same. I speak in short sentences. I'm just a guy doing his job. So here he is with his partner. Thursday, they're about to stop this guy from committing the crime of murdering his own great-grandfather. This is a serious offense. So they stop him from doing it. They buzz back to their present. And as they come into the Chrono Corps headquarters, they see themselves leaving. And so Joe talks to himself from the future, says, hey, you caught him okay then? He said, no problem. Here's a tip. He's hanging out in March 1968. That's where you'll find him. The guy spills his guts, this little punk rock guy. And so then they head back out. And once again, they see their future selves. This time, Joe says, things didn't go so good. Ed's got a black eye. Better pick up some raw steak at the canteen. So they do that. Then they go to their next job. And there's some guy just punches Ed in the face, right in the eye. And he says, wait do you see what happens to your career? I know the future. So, of course, they come back. Ed's got a raw steak on his eye. And once again, this time, they came back a little early. So now there's three of them. They hide behind a potted plant. So it won't cause too much confusion. They go to the canteen. Poor Ed has been really shaken by this whole experience. Once again, they meet each other. So it's just this big loop. And then we see they're doing a sting operation. Ed and Joe are dressed as nuns. Ed fucks up. He jumps the gun, actually grabs a little baby. And this is the thing that guy predicted. The guy who punched him in the eye. Because Ed's been so shaken. That's why he made the mistake. So he gets reprimanded. It's not good for his career. Ed finally flipped out. Went back to 1963 using a time machine. He was planning on marrying his own grandmother. He was totally against the rules. Joe had to arrest him himself. Had to go back in time. God, I love the way he draws this character. So then Joe falls in love with the grandmother himself and decides to marry her back in 1963. And then he quits the force. Her name's Tuesday. So he says, funny how things worked out with me being Ed's grandpa now. Ed didn't think it was funny. He gets out in 4 more years from Chrono jail. He says he's going to kill me. He's going to kill his own grandpa. Next, another time twister, this time drawn by Eric Bradbury. And this is like, once again, making time seem like this nuts and bolts thing. He was the foreman at the time factory. These are workers who find, or kind of coal miners who find a time seam a few millennia thick. Then they process the raw time. It's like the fates. The sorting bays where they grade the time between good times and bad times. Precious moments, golden years, salad days. The slugs in that. I'll have to have a word. This is like Alan Moore just being all clever and smarty pants guy. But it is actually kind of clever, genuinely clever. So it's all stuff like that. Acting like, time is this, is a factory where they make time. There's this one guy who has to remember everything that ever happened in all of existence. If he forgets something, it vanishes from living memory. He says, "How's it going, Cyril?" He says, "Don't interrupt me. How can I concentrate? I've just forgotten where everybody put their ballpoint pens." So that's why everyone loses their ballpoint pens. And I like this, how the guy, he's like, "Oh, where's my ballpoint?" Never mind. So it already happened. And then the guy is so caught up in this tour, the tour guide here, the foreman, he says, "Oh no, the biggest job of all. I've got to wind up the mainspring before it runs down." And the whole universe stops because this foreman forgot to turn the fob. Kind of silly, but also kind of very clever and interesting. Next, we have another story by Mike White. This one's called Going Native. We see this guy. He's it looks like a, space future guy, but he's hanging out in the Paleolithic age. He's been stranded there for a while, and his name's Woodrow. And I guess he's made friends with the local Neanderthals. The reason why he traveled back in time is he wanted to see why there's that gap in the evolutionary record between Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon. One of the Neanderthals, this female, she seems to like hanging around him. And as time passes, he, even though she looks kind of weird, he just kind of becomes more charmed by her. And you can tell he's going to fall in love with her. Because now he thinks she looks beautiful. When you're in love, you can think that about anybody. So their love blossoms. And eventually, they become a couple, and they have children, kids with straight backs like the Cro-Magnons. So this is just like another DC short story, like it turns out he was the gap. That's why Neanderthals became Cro-Magnons. This one's really weird. This definitely seems like a Twilight Zone. It's called Ring Road. It's drawn by Redondo again, Jesus Redondo. And so the driver stopped soon as she saw me. I had a girlfriend once that I looked kind of pinched and starved. And this woman just escaped from jail. Oh, sorry, mental institution. There's all this money in the backseat. So she's like, "This is great." And then as she's, the radio, because I think this takes place back in like the 40s or something. Because when she puts on the radio, it's like Glenn Miller. But then the music starts changing. And then she hears news items like, "Oh, Japan invades, Pearl Harbor." She's like, "What?" So as she's driving, it seems like the decades are flying by. All of a sudden, we see these guys dressed as greasers. She looks at a calendar on the wall at this gas station. It's 1957. She thinks it's some kind of weird joke. Apparently, she doesn't even have to fill up with gas. She just keeps driving and driving. Later on, she picks up this hippie guy. And she's just totally confused by his language, saying "out of sight," shit like that. It looks like it's 1968, according to this hippie. She drives and drives. Now it looks like punk rockers. The radio was playing this awful stuff that sounded like machine music. And then all of a sudden there's a giant mushroom cloud. And then after a while, she didn't see anything anymore, just deserts and craters. Every now and then she might see some horrible looking mutants. She never felt hungry. All this crazy stuff was happening in the sky. And then pretty soon it's just her floating through space. She looked older when she looked in the mirror. But now it's a big loop. And now she's back in the time of dinosaurs. The first men, first humans. And finally she pulls up to this woman, this young woman. And it's all going to start again. Kind of an interesting story. Very it does remind me of some weird Twilight Zone. This one's called The Time Machine, drawn by Jesus Redondo again. This guy's really got chops, this Jesus Redondo guy. So we see this guy, Harry Bentley, he's falling. He's just falling through time. He's like the time machine. It worked. It really worked. So now he's like seeing these images. Him back in his nursery in 1948. He was like, I made it. His childhood doll Duffa was there. So he's like, he kind of gets a little sad. He's like, oh my God, my parents made me throw that away. Doesn't this look like a Steve Ditko panel? Look at this. That's really interesting. So now he keeps falling through time. Actually, it's a little forward. His first love is here, Jackie Rutherford. So he's remembering that, and then he keeps falling. And he marries this woman. Doesn't work out. He has to go on the dole queue. Him and his wife always argue over money. Eventually, their love dissipates and she leaves him because he's obsessed. He wants to build a time machine. He's so disappointed with what's happened to his life that all he can think about is like, I have to build a time machine and go back to when things were better. So eventually, now another flashback. It's 1987, and his whole theory of time travel was wrong, he realizes. So he's so disillusioned, he jumps off a bridge, and by falling into the water and drowning, descending to the depths of the river, he found his time machine, and it worked. It really worked. So he wasn't really descending through time. He was just descending in a river, drowning to death, and his life was flashing before his eyes. He's got a big smile on his face. Kind of like that one. It's a little corny, but it is actually a good twist. This next one is the startling success of Sideways Scuttleton. John Higgins art. John Higgins, man, he's so, his art changes every one. I don't like the art in this one that much. So the narrator's on his way home. This guy grabs his arm. He says, Scuttleton's the name. Sideways Scuttleton. So basically this guy, he's always had the skill. He can kind of slip sideways through the dimensions into alternate realities. The first time he did it as a little boy, he ended up in a world where the Nazis won World War II. He realizes that he can make a lot of money. So if the Germans won World War II, they're going to need a lot more jackboots are going to be needed. So he slides back, buys a bunch of jackboots cheap. You know, in our reality, after the World War II, nobody wanted jackboots anymore. The German army didn't need them. There wasn't a German army, or at least that kind. And so then he goes back, sells them to the Wehrmacht. So he does this for years, makes a lot of money. He meets Norma Jean as a waitress, young Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean Baker. He met Hitler in another reality, and he basically just brought him to this reality so he can play Hitler in all these movies and TV shows. He just has all these goofy scams using his ability. So now he's in a reality where the South wants the Civil War. And all of a sudden when he gets up, he has this horrible pain in his back. And because of that, he can't do his little wiggle. That's how he slips sideways through dimensions. He does this little thing with his hips. So he tries to get back home, and because his hips are off, his back is hurting, he keeps going to the wrong reality. This one, there's giant pigeons everywhere. And he realizes that when the narrator here, we can see his hand, offers him £1 so he can make a phone call, I think. Or, no, bus fare. He realizes, this isn't the right world. We have paper pounds where I come from, not coins. It's not that, pretty dumb. So now we just have 4 little short stories that have nothing to do with any of the, the time twisters or Tharg's future shocks. This first one's called Hot Item. This one is definitely Alan Moore, getting his crazy ideas. There's basically, this is the end of all things. It's like way far in the future. It's what scientists have predicted for years. Eventually there'll be entropy. There'll be the heat death of the universe. There's just less and less energy in the universe. That Wildstorm Spotlight with Mr. Majestic, he kind of talks about this in that comic. It's totally the second law of thermodynamics. It's things will get cooler, and all the energy in the universe will just level out. But so now we're in 1 billion years in the future. I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be any humans left or any sentient creatures if it got to that point, but there are. And this is just Alan Moore being all clever. These guys are in this weird steam-powered automobile. These heat jackers are trying to steal their energy. They can only go 200 meters an hour. So they're trying to get back to their encampment. The bad guys, the heat jackers, shoot at them, but there's no kinetic energy left, so the bullets just fall on the ground. So they're like, we'll have to jump them instead. And they can barely chase them. They're like, it's no good. They put centimeters in between us. Kind of fun idea. So they finally make it. These guys escape. And they're like, we've got another 300 or 400 meters to go. That's going to take us a week. So this a landslide happens. And luckily, gravity doesn't work that well. So the rock very slowly falls and gives them time to escape. They get attacked by these thermo leeches. They're attracted to their heat. And then all of a sudden, they start to melt. They've reached the crucial phase. All of their valency is draining away. The electrical charge that holds atoms together, it's just run out. So all of his other buddies here, they decide to warm themselves by the escaping body heat of this one melted alien, and they let our intrepid heroes go. They finally make it to the village. They come inside. They tell them that they've got this energy source better than anything. They found some energy that should last them for years. And the power, it's thrill power. So the whole thing was a stupid ad for 2000 AD. So annoying. But so many great ideas in this. Like, once we see Alan Moore already, he's just a really smart guy. This next story is Dr. Dibworthy's Disappointing Day, art by Alan Langford. So Dr. Dibworthy, one Tuesday afternoon, discovers the secret of time travel. And he developed a device. He didn't know how to bring objects back. So he had to devise a scientific test. So his idea was to send an object back to some particular point in time where it would change history. If the past had really been changed, the present would change too. It stood to reason. And so now we see him do these experiments. He says nothing happened, but all of a sudden there's a bust of Hitler on his table, and he's dressed as a kind of a brown shirt, kind of a Nazi uniform. Then he sends something else back. He drops an anvil on King John right before the Magna Carta. He figures he has to make the changes bigger because he's not seeing anything. He says nothing happened. Now that it's King Tutankhamun bust, he's wearing this totally different outfit. Next, he does it again. This time it's Genghis Khan. It looks like Genghis Khan has taken over the world. Next, he turns into some kind of witch doctor. But the whole time, he doesn't see any change because, of course, you wouldn't know. People's memories would be altered. They would think the world was always that way. Genghis Khan has always controlled the world if you were in that reality. So then he decides to make a huge change. He's going to stop the primal atom, the single source of all existence in the universe. He's going to stop the Big Bang. Nothing happened. Nothing at all. It had been a disappointing day. And we just see everything go white. And I kind of like how this was an ad here, but it even adds to it. Because like we actually see everything go white, even on the bottom half of the page. It's just like almost a fortuitous thing. Next we have hyper-historic headbang. And this is another one of Alan Moore trying to be funny. There's this band in the future called Max Megadoom and the Time Bombs. And there's this DJ who's kind of telling us their story. They're the biggest man in the universe. It sounds like they're really, like, they're playing these stupid instruments. The lyrics are really dumb. The song titles are like, let's just smash everything up like. So they invented, we see this reporter here, he's a robot reporter. Sorry, he's the one telling the story. And, well, I forgot to mention, this is art by Alan Davis. Some pretty nice stuff. So apparently they invented this thing, planetophonic sound. They made a small planetoid, and it's just a disc. There's a hole in the middle, and these canyons spiral from the outer rim of the planet to the center. Within these canyons, there's these genetically engineered creatures, each one bred to sing one note with perfect pitch. There's billions of them. This giant diamond stylus from a spaceship comes down and runs through the grooves, and as it kills all of these creatures, they each have this different pitch, and it's a sound that you can hear throughout the universe. So it's a giant record, if you haven't already figured it out, but with a difference. So they're all talking about their newest sound evolution, because they're always trying to up themselves with how loud they can make their music. And this one is basically, they've invented this time machine. So they're going to play along to all these amazing sounds throughout time. The first atomic explosions have an amazing bass note. Pompeii exploding. Tunguska 1908, the famous meteorite, sounds just like a drum roll. California earthquake of 1991. Dinosaurs screeching. It all becomes part of they're playing it like an instrument. And then the sun going nova, and then we go back to the Big Bang here. And it looks like the whole audience has been just knocked on their ass. Apparently Alan Moore really wanted them to all be dead, but the editors made him add a groan to one of them, so it just looks like they're all dazed. I'm pretty sure they'd be dead if they saw the Big Bang. Next is the lethal laziness of Tobilia Loam. This is art by Boluda. Just has one name, like Madonna. And never heard of this guy. He's pretty good. This is another story where he tells it in verse, almost like it's a children's book. This tale concerns Lobelia Loam, who would not wash or use a comb, or make attempts to keep things neat, a slothful, sullen slab of meat. So she's this incredibly lazy woman, very slovenly. Her poor father is just overwhelmed trying to keep up with her, trying to, clean up after her. One day the father dies when he falls down the basement steps. And she sees that her father, who's an inventor, was working in his basement. And she finds a time machine. all of a sudden she's actually filled with the energy, and she's like, wait. Well, first she throws her father into the time machine. She just figures, hey, this will be just a great way to get rid of shit. Nothing returns from this. So she starts shoveling all this crap in there, just shoving it in. And pretty soon she hires all these designers and makes the house really nice. But everyone who comes over to her house, she kills them. She figures she has a great way to dispose of them. Just throw them into this time machine. Who knows where they'll end up. And she becomes a mass murderess. She keeps putting ads in the paper, inviting these men to dinner. She's very wealthy, and she keeps killing them. Meanwhile, though, now that she's rich from killing all these guys and taking all their money, she goes back to her original ways. But every now and then she can't even move, so she starts shoveling the shit into the garbage again. I'm sorry, into the time hole. But then one day, it's March 12th, 1994, she hears this rumbling starting from the basement, coming from the basement. And so apparently she was shoveling all this stuff into the time machine, and it's now March 12th, 1994, where the time machine came out. So all of that crap comes out, completely destroys the house, and kills her. She's crushed under just all that garbage. Next, we have Abelard Snaz. This is a character Alan Moore created. Here we're in for a few episodes. And it starts off as a Rojaws Robotail. He was the cute little Rojaws there. This is drawn by Steve Dillon. And this is when Steve Dillon put a little more work and variety into his artwork. So apparently there's this crime-ridden planet. Even the Prime Minister could barely make it a few blocks without getting mugged. And he shows up at this place. It's called Think Incorporated. This is where this is Abelard Snaz's. This is his business. Even his own secretary mugs them. And every level they go up, people mug him. Finally, they get to Snaz's office. He's the man with the 2-story brain. He has a super mind. Basically, he has 2 brains behind those eyes. And basically, they say, we need you to use your super brain and, stop this crime problem. Edwin's his cute little robot companion. And he comes up with this idea. We'll make robot police. But these police are a little too fervent. And so they start arresting people for breaking laws of etiquette. Like laws of good taste. Someone's socks don't match their shirt, and they bust them. So almost everyone's getting arrested. So now they've got an even worse problem. And these guys foolishly look to Abelard Snaz to solve that. So Abelard Snaz says, hey, I'll make robot robbers. The robot cops will be so involved with trying to stop these robot robbers, they'll ignore the normal citizens. But it just turns into this giant gang war in the streets between these robots. People are getting killed in the crossfire. So once again, these dumb mayors and whatever ministers to say, oh, you got to stop this. And I don't know why they keep coming to him if he keeps fucking up like this. And he basically says, I got an idea. Since we're all the Earthmen have to leave Earth because it's such a hellhole because these robots fight each other. He says, I know what I'll do. I'll build a planet, a great big robot planet. And they're like, enough of you. And they throw him out the airlock with his robot. Now we have the return of the 2-story brain. This is Mike White draws this. There was actually a second story in between these 2 stories. Alan Moore explains that he inadvertently kind of stole R.A. Lafferty's, the science fiction author. He stole some of his ideas. He didn't realize it. I think anyone can do that. Or if you're a writer, you write a lot of stuff. You're like, oh, I got a great idea. And then you realize, oh, that's from a book I read 20 years ago. So he realized that and basically doesn't want it to ever be reprinted. So now we see Abelard Snaz, is floating through space, and these guys rescue him. And it's this guy here, his spaceship, and his name's Julio Mulabar. And he's just a sad sack. He's like, oh, I've gambled my life savings away on this casino. My wife is going to kill me. And so Abelard Snaz says, fret no more, good sir. I can solve all your problems. Let's go back to that casino planet and I'll win all your money back. So they do that. They go to the roulette tables. And using a little like time machine, he can just go back 20 seconds after finding out what the ball lands on and win every time. So he makes Julio all this money. The time machine is actually in the robot, in what's-his-face's, this little Edwin, the robot's chest. But Edwin gets a little carried away, cavorting with these female robots with all the money he got, and he breaks the time machine. So now they can't make any more money, and what's-his-face, Abelard makes a bet with this guy for all of his money. He loses all of Julio's money. And now without the time machine, they can't make more. So Julio grabs the time machine and says, I'm sending you back to where I found you. And now they're floating through space again. And Julio flies off. So that's if you've noticed, this is the kind of the shtick of Abelard Snaz. At the end of every story, it looks like he's dead or dying. But then some crazy, miraculous thing happens. The next story, the first page, where he's rescued. So now we see it's way in the future. There's this alien race called the Farbians. And they're just, speaking of sad sacks, their whole culture is based on just whining and like, oh, our cattle are starving, our crops won't grow. They totally believe that the gods had it in for them. So they're singing this goofy song about like how everything sucks. And then these guys say, what's that out in space? And who should it be but Abelard Snaz, frozen in a block of ice. And poor Edwin the robot is just a hunk. He's destroyed, basically. So Edwin's alive. He was preserved in that ice. They think he's a god because he resembles his 4 eyes. They have a god who looks like that. So they're like, oh. So he totally acts like a god. He just lives like a king. And so they basically say that, this is kind of funny. It's a callback to all of a bunch of these other stories. He says, this elder of the Farbians, he tells them all the horrible things that have inflicted his people. He says, a huge alien eradicated all trace of our proud culture. We see that Richelian exterminating this planet. Next we went to this other planet, but then we were right in the path of the Platinum Horde. Then we finally found another planet, and it was invaded by quarks. Is that their name? The Groks. So we see a callback to those guys. I love that, how Onmore weaves it all together. So they basically say there's this, there's this prophecy, and the first 3 dooms will strike the Farbians. First will be economic, then it'll be environmental, and then it'll be a black hole will swallow up the planet. If he doesn't come up with a solution to all 3 of these problems, they're going to throw him to the piranha dogs. So now he's got to figure this out. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but using his ingenious mind, he actually figures out a way to solve their economic problems, solve the economic crisis. Economic, and then the environmental. And then he figures he makes this invention. It's like a giant space needle, sewing needle, that's going to stitch up the black hole using some kind of cohesive neutrinos or something. Something Alan Moore probably read in a science magazine. But then he fucked up the calculations once again because they're in that needle. And the ship gets sucked into the black hole. So it looks like this is the end for Abelard Snars, huh? Of course not. Next we have Halfway to Paradise. This is art by John Cooper. And now we're inside the black hole. And this is, it's almost like the afterlife. But of course, Alan Moore makes it very bureaucratic. You know, it's like that movie Heaven Can Wait. And there's all these other gods there, because he tells them he's a god, since the Fabians worshipped him as one. So here we see like Odin and Horus, I think. There's Zeus. And of course they say, we're not that strong anymore. Nobody believes in us. So Abelard comes up with a brilliant plan to find a new venue. And then so he goes to the, like the contemporary times and basically tries to market these gods to people, make them trendy. But unfortunately, people start sacrificing people to these gods. The world becomes insane. And the gods love it. They're like, this is great. And so Zeus says, well, we'll deal with you. You're being a troublemaker. We know how to deal with your type. Let's chain him to a rock for all eternity. So then he actually picks up a Rubik's Cube. I guess it was recurrent at the time. Those are hot. He says, Zeus says, I shall imprison you in a place of bleak desolation from which thou shalt not be delivered till thou hast solved a cube of my devising. So Abelard's all like, oh, I've seen those Rubik's Cubes before. I'm a genius. I'll have that done in 30 seconds. But then when he's transported to this place of devastation, he realizes, he's like, wait, where's the cube? Because he's standing on it. It's this giant cube that he's not going to be able to move. Or will he? The multi-story mind mellows out. So this is one afternoon during eternity. We see this like groovy, mellow kind of astronauts, kind of talk like they're from the 70s from California. They say things like hassle and just like they talk like that, kind of hippie types. And I guess they're from Amnesty Intergalactic, like Amnesty International, but you get it. And they see this giant crane, and Abelard Snaz is operating it, and he's laughing like a madman. He's like, 6 million years, and I'm almost done. One more side to turn. And this is by Paul Neary, by the way. They grab him, and he's like, no! It's taken me 6 million years. It took me 12,000 years just to mine enough metal. 30,000 years to build the crane. You gotta let me stay. I'll kill you. So they have to zap him with a dart, tranquilizer dart. When he wakes up, he's calmed down. They shaved his hair because he looks like a crazy hermit. And he's in this Earth of the future. I guess California won World War 26, and they turned the whole world into a place of groovy vibes. And, this Alan Moore, I think, just wanted to make fun of this kind of speaking, this California jargon. So the future seems pretty nice. There's no problems. They've solved war, poverty. It's a paradise. But Abelard Snaz is bored. He's like, I'm going to go crazy if I can't, Because they tell him not to invent anything. They're like, we don't need anything. This is a utopia. But he comes up with this idea. He's like, guys, we could have these tennis tournaments using robots. It'll allow everyone to have better leisure time. He talks like they do. He's trying to convince them. There'll be giant robots, so the people in these huge stadiums will all be able to see them great. He said, so the day of the big event, one of these groovy guys says, how'd you get these guys to play tennis so well in so short a time? He says, I just took a personality chip from the great 20th century tennis players that were in your computer archive. Which tennis player's personality did you use? This guy named John something or other. So I already knew where this was heading. So the umpire, referee, or whatever they call in tennis, he makes a call, and these tennis robots go berserk. They start yelling at the ref, and they're like, "I'm gonna tear the stadium apart. Me too. Fuck all y'all." And they start, like Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla. They just start attacking. And even though these California guys are mellow, they're gonna kill Abelard Snaz, and they throw him in this giant jacuzzi that's the size of like Lake Michigan. They crank up the heat, so he's gonna drown and boil, be parboiled. So it's just this reference. I don't know if you guys even know who this is, but John McEnroe. John McEnroe was this tennis player in the 70s, one of the best tennis players of all time, but also a huge asshole. His whole career was about him yelling at people, being a dick. So Alan Moore made this whole story just for that goofy joke. Now, once again, we see that Abelard is not going to die. This is Mike Whiteheart, by the way. So this is one's called Genius's Pain. All of a sudden, a tractor beam grabs Abelard before he can fall into the boiling jacuzzi lake. He's saved, and it's the manager of the universe. Now, the manager starts asking him questions. He's basically on trial. He says, "Are you the same Abelard Snaz who caused the planet Twop to become infested with deranged robots?" So we actually go through a little memory lane. He's talking about all the adventures of Abelard Snaz that we've just read. So Abelard whips up this weapon. He says, "I got to break out of here. They got my number. I'm screwed." And he also grabs this old man who was also on trial. He's on this like little wagon, and he accidentally walks into the Sun manufacturing chambers. He's not completely burned up because the old man's body, the trolley, protected him. And then it looks like they're going to hand down a sentence, a harsh sentence, and Abelard's like, "Oh, I can't what's going to happen?" And they say, "Actually, we have one thing to say to you. Happy birthday to you." And they get him a present. This just doesn't make any sense. This is like the end of The Prisoner or something. It's like, what? And the present is Edwin. Now, I didn't mention this, but he never liked Edwin, and he was happy when he was junked. That look on Edwin's face is so funny to me. It's so perverse and goofy. So they're like, we looked, found this robot. We realized it was your old robot, and we fixed it. And Abelard is like, "No." And it looks like when they're all alone, he's going to tear Edwin a new one. And it looks like he is. We have a cover gallery here. There's that Brendan McCarthy. And I believe this is Ian Gibson. I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, it's Mike McMahon. The Platinum Horde. I like Mike McMahon's art. We have a bio of Alan Moore and every artist. They give us a little bitty bio of everyone. And guys, I'm sorry, it was Jose Casanovas, Jesus Redondo. I think I mixed that up. And that's it for the complete Alan Moore Future Shocks. I think I just fucked up the spine by holding it open like that the whole time. So hope you guys enjoyed looking at that. Sorry it took so long, but there was a lot of stuff in here. Alan Moore says in the other introduction that there's no better way to learn how to write. This is shows him, growing as a writer, because writing little 4-page, 5-page stories is the best way. You got to come up with the whole concept, characters, and then do it all over again 5 pages later. So, yeah, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of pretty groaning, bad stuff in here, but still, the good stuff outweighs the bad in my book, and it's Alan Moore, so it's fascinating to see as him develop, and lots of great art too. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.